Over the years, as I've walked through life and observed people and their behaviors, I've come to understand something important. Intelligence isn't just about how much you know, it's about how you live, how you treat others, and how well you learn from your mistakes. But here's the catch. There are clear signs, 6 of them to be exact, that reveal when someone is lacking in wisdom. And no, this isn't about mocking others or feeling superior. It's about reflection growth and becoming more aware of the traps we can all fall into. Recognizing these signs helps us avoid making the same mistakes ourselves. It also allows us to support those who may not even realize they are stuck in a cycle of their own ignorance. Wisdom begins with self-awareness. In this message, we'll explore the 6 unmistakable signs of a foolish person. Each one carries a powerful lesson, a real-life example, and a mirror for personal reflection. If you're ready to walk the path toward deeper understanding and maturity, let's begin this journey together. Because wisdom isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. And every step forward starts with seeing ourselves clearly. A closed mind. A closed mind is one of the clearest signs of a foolish person. It's like a fortress built brick by brick with fear, pride, and stubbornness. People with closed minds don't just reject new ideas, they actively block their own paths to growth. They live inside a mental box where everything must follow their familiar rules. Anything that challenges their beliefs feels like a threat. Often these individuals appear confident on the surface, but that confidence is a mask. True confidence comes from understanding that you don't know everything and being open to learning from others. Take Mark, for example. He was a department manager at a company I once worked for. Mark was convinced that the old way of doing things was still the best, even though his team was clearly falling behind competitors. When a younger employee suggested using modern project management software to boost productivity, Mark instantly dismissed the idea. His response, "We've done it this way for 10 years and it's worked fine." The result, while other teams across the company moved forward and achieved impressive results, Mark's team lagged. Without innovation, their performance dropped and morale suffered. But instead of examining his own choices, Mark blamed his staff, the market, and even bad luck. He refused to consider that his outdated mindset might be the problem. That's the danger of a closed mind. It doesn't just prevent personal growth. It holds back everyone around it. People like Mark become obstacles, not leaders. On the other hand, wise individuals know they don't have all the answers. They remain open to new information, even if it challenges their current way of thinking. Stoic philosophy teaches us that wisdom isn't about being right all the time. It's about the willingness to grow, to adapt, and to seek the truth even when it's uncomfortable. If you notice this tendency in yourself or someone around you, pause and reflect. Are you resisting new ideas simply because they are unfamiliar? Are you letting fear or pride prevent you from moving forward? Admitting you're wrong or that you need to learn something new is not a weakness. In fact, it's a sign of strength. When you let go of stubbornness, you make room for progress. The key lesson here is simple. Be teachable. Encourage innovation. Listen to fresh ideas and don't let your ego keep you stuck in the past. Only when the walls of pride come down can true wisdom take root. Embrace curiosity and you'll unlock doors to both personal and professional growth. Constant blaming. One of the most obvious traits of a foolish person is their habit of constantly blaming others. These individuals are experts at making excuses. When something goes wrong, it's never their fault. A failed project, the market was too difficult. A missed promotion. Their boss was clearly biased. Whatever the situation, they find someone or something else to blame. But underneath it all, blaming is just a defense mechanism. It's a way to avoid facing the truth. And ironically, that same shield they use to protect themselves ends up becoming a prison. It locks them into a pattern of denial and keeps them from growing. Let me tell you about Lisa. She was an event organizer I worked with a few years ago. She was in charge of planning a major conference. When the event turned out to be a disaster with poor attendance, Lisa immediately blamed the marketing team. She insisted they hadn't done enough to promote it. But when we looked into the situation more closely, we discovered that Lisa had failed to send the necessary event details on time. Because of this, the entire marketing campaign was delayed. Even after being presented with the facts, Lisa refused to take responsibility. She kept pointing fingers, unwilling to acknowledge her own role in the failure. The result, her colleagues lost trust in her. Eventually, Lisa had no choice but to step down from her role. This is what happens when someone is trapped in the cycle of blaming. They damage their credibility, weaken relationships, and sabotage their own future. On the other hand, wise individuals take responsibility. They aren't afraid to say, "I made a mistake." They understand that accepting fault doesn't make them weak, it makes them stronger. Owning your actions is the first step toward growth. It shows emotional maturity, integrity, and a commitment to self-improvement. The Stoics believed that mastering life begins with mastering responsibility. If you always blame others, you give away your power. But when you take full ownership of your choices and actions, you gain control over your future. If you find yourself falling into a habit of blaming others, pause and ask yourself some honest questions. Did I really do everything I could? Is there something I overlooked or could have done differently? Blaming may feel good in the moment, but it solves nothing. It doesn't change the outcome. It only delays your growth. Taking responsibility, on the other hand, opens the door to new lessons and better results. So stop looking for someone to blame. Instead, look within. The path to becoming wiser and more capable always starts with a willingness to be accountable. Choose growth. Choose truth. Choose responsibility. Arrogance over humility. Have you ever met someone who feels the need to prove they are the smartest person in the room? They interrupt others, dismiss new ideas, and always have to be right. That behavior is more than just annoying. It is a clear sign of foolishness. Arrogance is one of the biggest barriers to wisdom and growth. People who are truly intelligent understand that learning never ends. They don't need to dominate conversations or prove themselves at every opportunity. Instead, they choose to listen. They value new perspectives and recognize that everyone has something to teach, no matter their background or position. Let me tell you about Michael, a manager at a large corporation I once worked with. Every time we had a meeting, Michael would take over the discussion. He constantly interrupted his team, mocked ideas that didn't match his own, and made it clear that he believed he was the smartest person in the room. His behavior wasn't just frustrating, it was destructive. One day, the company launched a new project that ultimately failed. Instead of taking the opportunity to reflect and ask what could have been done better, Michael immediately blamed his team. He claimed they hadn't properly understood his vision and ideas, but the truth was he never gave them a chance to speak. His arrogance had shut down the collaborative process from the start. When Michael's boss later asked him to reflect on the failure, he couldn't come up with a single valid reason for what went wrong. His pride had blinded him to the real issue, his refusal to listen and adapt. Arrogance isn't just unpleasant, it is a trap. It makes people believe they are always right even when they are clearly wrong. It shuts down growth and poisons relationships. People become defensive rather than open. They push others away and create an environment where ideas and creativity are stifled. On the other hand, humility is a strength. It is not about thinking less of yourself, but about thinking of yourself less. Humility allows people to ask questions, to admit when they are wrong, and to welcome feedback even when it is uncomfortable. The Stoics believed that the path to wisdom begins with humility. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of the most powerful men in history, wrote extensively about the need to stay grounded, to question oneself, and to never let praise cloud judgment. He understood that arrogance weakens a person's ability to grow while humility strengthens it. If you ever catch yourself becoming defensive in a conversation or unwilling to hear another point of view, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to learn or am I trying to look smart? That one question can shift your mindset entirely. Growth comes not from proving you are always right, but from admitting when you are wrong and being willing to learn. Humility invites others to share, to connect, and to grow alongside you. It creates a space where everyone can contribute and feel heard. So if you want to be wise, don't try to impress others. Focus instead on understanding them. Let go of the need to be right all the time. Replace arrogance with curiosity. And remember, the strongest people are not those who shout the loudest, but those who listen, reflect, and grow in silence. Lack of empathy. A lack of empathy is one of the clearest indicators of foolishness. It shows up as an inability or refusal to step into someone else's shoes, to understand their feelings, or to recognize the struggles they may be going through. People who lack empathy often live in emotional isolation. They may hurt others without even realizing it, not because they are cruel, but because they are disconnected from the emotional experiences of those around them. This absence of empathy doesn't just damage relationships, it also weakens one's character. Without empathy, a person becomes emotionally blind, unable to connect in a meaningful way, and incapable of understanding the deeper lessons that come through shared human experiences. Let me share the story of Paul, a coworker I once worked with. Paul had a habit of complaining about project delays. He rarely asked why things were behind or tried to understand the reasons. One day, a colleague named Susan missed a major deadline. Her son had been hospitalized with a serious illness, and she had been juggling work and caretaking responsibilities. Instead of offering support or even asking what happened, Paul criticized her harshly in front of the entire team. He saw her missed deadline as laziness or poor time management, completely unaware of the emotional weight she was carrying. His words not only embarrassed Susan, but they also created discomfort among the team. A year later, Paul found himself in a similar situation. His mother became seriously ill and he had to step away from work to care for her. Only then did he begin to understand the pressure Susan had been under. He realized how his earlier criticism lacked both compassion and perspective. That moment changed Paul. He became more understanding, more patient, and more connected with the people around him. It was empathy born from personal struggle that finally opened his eyes. Stoic philosophy teaches that true wisdom isn't found in intellect alone, but in how we relate to others. The Stoics believe that part of living a virtuous life includes recognizing our shared human experience. No one is immune to hardship, and everyone carries unseen burdens. When we choose to see the world through someone else's eyes, we deepen our understanding of both others and ourselves. If you notice a tendency in yourself to judge quickly or lack compassion, take a step back, ask questions, listen more closely. Make space for other people's emotions, even if you don't fully understand them. Empathy is not a weakness, it's a strength. It is the foundation of trust, respect, and meaningful connection. And through empathy, you not only become a better friend, colleague, or partner, but you also take a powerful step toward greater wisdom. Fear of change. The fear of change is one of the most limiting traits a person can have. While it may feel safe to stay in your comfort zone, that same comfort can quickly become a prison. People who fear change often cling to old habits and familiar routines even when they no longer serve them. It is like trying to hold on to water. It slips through your fingers while you insist that you still have control. Change is a natural part of life. It is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. Life is always moving forward. It bends, shifts, and evolves. Those who resist change end up stuck watching the world pass them by. The wise understand that growth only happens when we step into the unknown, when we leave behind what feels safe in order to discover what is possible. Let me share a story about Michael, a man who spent his entire life in a small, close-knit neighborhood. He loved that he knew everyone on the block. Every face, every shop, every corner brought him comfort. His children, now adults, encouraged him to move closer to them for better opportunities and support. But Michael refused. "Why would I leave?" he asked. "I know everyone here." Over time, however, the neighborhood began to change. Old friends moved away. The stores he loved closed down. The sense of familiarity he once cherished started to fade. Still, Michael held on, insisting that everything would return to the way it had been. Eventually, after much persuasion, he decided to visit his children's new town. To his surprise, he found not only a warm community, but also new connections, improved healthcare, and easier access to things he needed. When he finally moved, Michael realized how much he had been missing. The change he had feared ended up giving him a richer, more fulfilling life. That's the irony of fearing change. The very thing we resist often holds the key to the growth we seek. Staying in the same place out of fear doesn't preserve your life, it limits it. Stoic philosophy teaches us that change is not only inevitable but essential. The Stoics understood that resisting change is like fighting the tide. It is better to learn how to flow with it, to adapt, and to grow from each experience. Life is not meant to stay the same. Everything from the seasons to our thoughts is in constant motion. If you notice yourself resisting change, ask yourself two questions. What am I afraid of? And what might I be missing by staying where I am? When you reflect honestly, you might discover that your fear is not based on danger, but on uncertainty. And uncertainty is often where the greatest possibilities lie. Change can be uncomfortable, even painful at times, but that discomfort is temporary. What lasts is the strength and wisdom you gain by facing it. Each time you adapt, you expand your perspective. You build confidence in your ability to handle life's transitions. you grow. So if you find yourself clinging to what's familiar out of fear, take a deep breath. Remind yourself that change is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Embrace it, learn from it, and trust that what lies ahead may be even better than what you're leaving behind. Talking more than listening. One of the most common signs of foolishness is the tendency to talk more than you listen. We all know someone like this. The person who dominates every conversation, constantly interrupts, and rarely takes the time to truly hear what others are saying. They love the sound of their own voice and often believe their opinions are more important than anyone else's. But in doing so, they miss out on one of life's greatest sources of wisdom: listening. When someone talks more than they listen, it is not just annoying, it creates real damage. It weakens relationships, blocks learning, and leaves others feeling unheard and unvalued. It also signals a lack of humility. People who cannot listen usually believe they already know everything they need to know, which closes the door to personal growth. Let me share the story of John, a father I once knew. Every evening at dinner, John would take over the conversation. His children tried to share stories about their day, but he would quickly interrupt and redirect the topic back to himself. He often told the same stories from his past, barely acknowledging what his kids were saying. His wife once suggested a change in the family's financial planning, but John dismissed her input before she could finish her sentence. He insisted his way was the only way. What John didn't realize was that his behavior was pushing his family away. Over time, his children stopped opening up. His wife became silent during conversations. They all felt unheard, unseen, and unimportant. John believed he was being a good leader and provider, but in reality, he was creating emotional distance without even noticing. Listening is not a passive act. It is a deliberate skill that requires patience, attention, and empathy. It involves setting aside your ego, being present in the moment, and truly trying to understand what someone else is saying, not just waiting for your turn to speak. Stoic philosophy reminds us that silence is powerful. In silence, we gain understanding. In listening, we grow wiser. The Stoics taught that by listening, we learn not only about others, but also about ourselves. When you are always talking, you are simply repeating what you already know. But when you listen, you open yourself to new insights and deeper connections. If you recognize this trait in yourself, it is not too late to change. Start by becoming aware. The next time someone speaks, pause. Resist the urge to jump in with your own story or opinion. Instead, ask a question, reflect on what they said, show that you value their voice. Remember, the wise person listens with intention. The foolish one speaks only to hear themselves. If you want to build stronger relationships, earn respect, and grow as a person, practice the art of listening. It is one of the most underrated and powerful tools of personal growth. Final takeaway. We've explored 6 clear signs of a foolish person having a closed mind. Constant blaming arrogance over humility, lack of empathy, fear of change, and talking more than listening. But before you judge others or even judge yourself too harshly, take a step back. The truth is, we've all been guilty of one or more of these behaviors at some point in our lives. That doesn't make us permanently foolish. It makes us human. What really matters is what we do once we recognize these traits in ourselves. Do we ignore them and continue down the same path, or do we pause, reflect, and commit to change? That decision determines the direction of our growth. The purpose of pointing out these signs isn't to shame anyone, it's to raise awareness. Wisdom starts with seeing ourselves clearly. If you can honestly acknowledge when you've closed yourself off to new ideas, avoided taking responsibility, or failed to listen with intent, then you're already ahead of most. Self-awareness is the foundation for real change. Stoic philosophy reminds us that wisdom doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from embracing imperfection, learning from it, and making a conscious effort to improve. Each of the 6 signs we discussed offers a unique opportunity to become better. Where there is arrogance, you can choose humility. Where there is blame, you can take responsibility. Where there is fear of change, you can choose courage. Foolishness is not a permanent label. It's a temporary condition, one that disappears the moment you decide to grow. Wisdom, on the other hand, is a lifelong journey. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in moments of clarity, in honest conversations, and in quiet reflection. It grows when you admit mistakes, ask questions, and stay open to learning. So the next time you catch yourself resisting feedback, talking over someone, or blaming circumstances, use that moment as a turning point. Ask yourself, What can I learn right now? How can I respond differently? That's where the shift begins. This journey toward wisdom is not about becoming flawless. It's about becoming more aware, more thoughtful, and more grounded. It's for people who are brave enough to confront their weaknesses and strong enough to grow from them. You don't have to be wise all the time. You just have to be willing to keep learning. And if you're here reflecting on these lessons, then you've already taken the most important step. Keep walking the path. Keep learning from every mistake. Keep choosing growth over pride. And remember, you are not alone. We're all on this journey together, one step, one choice, one realization at a time.